All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Mainly Hoops podcast. We're going to be talking about a huge matchup this Thursday, top 10 matchup between Alabama and Purdue. Cody, what are your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a fun game. Obviously, last year's contest between these two teams was really fun with, Alabama had a lead for a decent amount of that game, but Purdue was able to go on a run like mid-second half to steal that game. And what was kind of most interesting about that game last year was Purdue was actually able to limit the possession count and kind of slow this game down and execute in the half court. And I do think that's going to be an emphasis for them again. It was a 68 possession game. Obviously, it was a hyper efficient game, finished 87-78. But um, yeah, I think if they're able to execute in the half court, I think they can give Alabama some issues. Obviously, Alabama's a team that's going to want to run consistently. You know, really get this Purdue defense in scramble mode, particularly the perimeter defenders, and then if Trey Kaufman-Wren's able to go, him and Clough moving in space probably isn't a great proposition for this Purdue defense overall. But yeah, but if TKR is able to go, I do think Purdue has a decent path on the offensive end. They're going to keep spamming that pick and roll game, and it's going to force Alabama to make a decision. You know, they're going to play, for the most part, they're going to play that deep drop coverage. I've seen them actually high hedge ball screens a little bit more often with Nate Oates, which I had never seen happen up until at the very end of last season. But if they're going to if Smith and Kaufman-Wren are going to be really comfortable in the pick and roll game, they can potentially, really play this game at their pace. Because if they're putting the ball in the basket, Alabama's not going to be able to run as often as they want to. But I do see advantages for both offenses, really, and it's going to create for a really fun contest.
Marcus, what about you? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would expect Purdue to be able to control the pace in this game just because of the way that Alabama's defense sets up, right? We've talked about it now going back to last year. Just their overall style on the defensive end doesn't put a ton of pressure on you. They're not going to really turn you over. Like Braden Smith should be very comfortable on this end. They've taken care of the ball very well, granted in 2 bye games so far, but they're 10th in the country in turnover rate, which, they had some struggles last year taking care of the ball at times. This is going to be a game where, like I said, Bama's not going to put a ton of pressure on them. So I think they should be able to kind of dictate the pace. Granted, it might be a little bit tougher on the road, in Alabama's gym, a different environment. But, ultimately, I think, like Cody said, the Purdue offense should have a ton of success. Looking at the other side, though, I have concerns with Purdue's ability to stop this Alabama team. I think Alabama, particularly like a guy like Philon, is going to be able to put a lot of pressure on the rim. I think, Purdue so far through 2 games is allowing a 75% field goal percentage and close to, so that's just like layups and dunks. They're 18 for 24 in the 2 games. I think like Philon, they're going to really push the pace, and especially if TKR can't go, the mobility of those bigs is going to be a bit more in question. I think the Alabama guards should be able to get downhill. And then, also I think that Alabama is going to shoot the ball better from 3 than they have thus far. Like Aiden Holloway is going to shoot it better than 22% from 3, right? It's crazy to think that they scored 103 points the other day, and they didn't even really shoot it all that well. So I think this is, especially against a team in Purdue that gives up the 3 ball a little bit. 248 so far through 2 games and 3-point rate defense. I think this Alabama team is going to be able to score. So I think ultimately it's going to come down to, can Purdue dictate the pace and limit the number of possessions Alabama gets? Because I think both offenses are going to be able to have their way in this game.
Yeah, I'm super excited for this matchup. I think in my opinion, you got 2 top 5 guards in the country with Philon and Braden Smith, and then I like Purdue's front court a lot better, but I'm curious to see how guys, especially if TKR can't go, how I don't really like Clough on the perimeter at all defensively. So I think this is going to be a really fun one. Cody, what do you think the biggest keys are for Alabama to come away with a home win here?
Yeah, I think mostly it's just trying to take advantage of a Purdue defense that I think is kind of still trying to figure out what what they want to do and how they want to, really cover ball screens for the most part. I've seen them at least in the exhibition game. I haven't watched much of them in their 2-bye games so far, but they've been kind of in between if they want to play drop or if they want to really hard hedge ball screens. And I think they're just a little bit worried with Clough on the floor that they're not really going to be able to filter everything into him. Daniel Jacobson, I think it's a different story. I think you can play drop coverage and kind of try to force this Alabama team off the 3-point line. Alabama's going to want to get downhill, but still, I think it's a Purdue defense that is still trying to figure themselves out at this point in time. But besides that, I think the pace battle is really the biggest part here. Like we've mentioned, if Alabama can, find a way to generate some stops, make Smith and TKR a little more uncomfortable than they typically do to lead guards and in the pick and roll game in general. And yeah, for the most part, I just think, and keep getting on the offensive glass too. I think that was a real avenue for them against St. John's. They didn't shoot it hyper efficiently, but they got 14 offensive rebounds in that game. So I think that's something that they can potentially exploit in this game, especially if TKR doesn't go. I would assume he's able to go, but for a Purdue defense that's trying to figure themselves out, I think that's exploitable too.
Marcus, what about you? What does Purdue have to do to come to Tuscaloosa and get a win?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've already touched on it quite a bit, but I think it's just coming out and controlling the pace right from the get-go. It's what they were able to do, like Cody said, last year. And if TKR can go, I think just playing out a pick and roll and then, using your off-ball shooting. Purdue's shooting at 40.6% from 3 thus far. Playing through those two guys, you've got, probably the best point guard in the country. And if, like Cody said, TKR is probably going to go. So if he can go, you've got a great player there alongside him. And then you've got shooters to spray it to in guys like Lawyer and CJ Cox, who hasn't really shot it all that well yet. I think there's certainly an avenue for Purdue to win this game. They've got the experience in this game. They have the talent, they have the offensive firepower. So I think really it's just going to come down to, can they dictate the pace to kind of limit the possession count so that Alabama's not getting out and running, over and over, because especially if TKR can't go, life's going to be pretty difficult. If you're getting into a ultra high possession count game with Jacobson and Clough having to get up and down the court that many times. So to me, it's going to be really important from the get-go that they limit the possession count.
Yeah. Who do you guys like so far? You guys made a pick a little early, but who do you like in this one?
Yeah, who do you like, Marcus? You go first.
I like Purdue, actually. I think this is a good spot for them. I think TKR is going to play. I think ultimately, their experience, their shooting off the ball, and then the pick and roll tandem of TKR and Braden Smith. We have question marks about the Alabama rim protection. I think they're going to be able to get to the rim out of that pick and roll, and if not, be able to spray to shooters and knock shots down. I think they're going to be able to keep the possession count low enough and get enough done on the defensive end to ultimately get the win. But I just like Purdue's offensive efficiency here with the guys that are going to be handling the ball, for the majority of the game. But I think this will be a tight game, really fun game, but I think Purdue is able to squeak this one out.
What about you, Cody?
Yeah, it's I'm pretty much 50-50 on this, so take anything that I have with a grain of salt. I think this comes down to the last few possessions of the game, but I'm probably just going to side with Alabama just because they're going to be at home. I know that's a cop out ultimately, but I do see a few too many issues with this Purdue defense at this point in time. They just don't have any true wings that can really be switchable and get stops. And I think Alabama can get these bigs out in space. TKR is probably going to be playing the 4 for most of this game if he's able to go, and Clough and Jacobson are going to split time. And I just think Alabama is a little bit too athletic. I think they can attack those guys a little bit too often to come out with the win here. I'll say Alabama wins 82-81.
Yeah, close one. I think I'm with Marcus. I like Purdue here, but no matter the result, it's always fun to get these home and home games that teams set up in early season. It's a lot of fun for all the fans. And I think that wraps us up for today. So thank you all for tuning in to another episode of the Mainly Hoops podcast.